Okay, hello, hi. My name is Kirsty, and before I really begin, I just want to thank you all for being here today. Baby loss is a subject that's very close to my heart. And I want to start off by sharing a little bit of my background and how I ultimately became part of this baby loss community. So in 2012, I completed my training and I found myself in my first qualified midwifery job, which was very exciting, very nerve-wracking, but I'd worked really hard to get there. And I thought that I was competent enough to look after these families going through childbirth. However, I quickly realised that a massive part of my training had been neglected. Baby loss, bereavement and death were all subjects which I'd rarely heard during my training, and I wasn't familiar with them. I knew of the subject of stillbirth, but I hadn't experienced it firsthand. We'd had just a single lecture on stillbirth during university, and during my training I'd been sheltered from caring for the parents of babies who had died. But it seemed that my lack of experience didn't matter, as between the years of 2012 and 2016, I looked after many families who had lost their babies. And I always tried my best. I learnt as I went, and I used my own assumptions of grief to help navigate what I did in those situations. But did I know what I was doing? No. Did I feel competent with looking after these parents? No. Do I wish now that I'd done things differently? Yes. In 2016, I found out the hard way what bereavement care really needed. So flashback to August 2016, my husband and I were expecting our second child. We'd already had a healthy daughter the year before, and we had a completely fine pregnancy, fine labour, so we had no reason to think that anything would go wrong. Everything seemed to be ticking along absolutely fine. We went ahead to our 20-week scan, excited to see our baby again, as she would be, and to find out what we were having. I lay down for my scan, and I remember thinking how it seemed to take a while, but I wasn't worried. And then the sonographer said, "We have seen an abnormality with your baby's heart, and the heart rate is a little slower than we would expect." I was worried, but I still didn't think anything was horrendously wrong, because bad things never actually happen to you, do they? So we were taken into another room when the midwife made us an emergency appointment at Evelina Heart Hospital in London for 2 days' time. She told us not to worry. All we could do was wait to see the specialist. And they couldn't really give us any indication at that point as to what was wrong. But of course, I went home, and straight away, I got out my Doppler. And as many of you would realise, a heart beating at 60 beats per minute is not what you would want to hear. And I wish I could tell you that it was my heartbeat, but it wasn't. So Monday came, and we went to London. Denial or hope was in full force. I didn't want to believe that anything could be seriously wrong. But this time, as I lay down for my scan, I gripped my husband's hand as hard as I could. And I remember watching my consultant's face and analysing every sharp inhale that she took. After an hour's scan in silence, we were taken into another room to be told that our baby daughter had complete heart block, a condition where the electrical signals between the ventricles and atriums don't work. So blood was flowing into her heart at one rate and leaving it at another, which is why her heart rate sat at 60 beats per minute. It was also suspected that she had pulmonary stenosis and a hole in the heart. Being only 20 weeks, delivering our baby wasn't an option. Termination was offered, but at this point we didn't feel like we had enough information. We were told that there was an 80% chance that she may continue at the level she was at. So we decided to carry on, and the goal back then was to get to 33 weeks and deliver via C-section. So over the next 4 weeks, my stomach grew, whilst we had scans weekly, some positive and some less so. It was discovered during this time that I carry anti-Ro and anti-LAR antibodies. These are horrid little antibodies that were continuously attacking our baby's heart and causing the complete heart block. These antibodies are only picked up if specifically tested for, or if the mum is already known to have lupus, or as was found with me, Sjogren's syndrome. As the odds of having these antibodies and affecting a baby are 1 in 20,000, it made the suspected outcome for our baby incredibly hard, as consultants typically see this once every 10 years. So they couldn't really give us any information as to what they thought would happen. At just over 24 weeks, we were delivered the news that our baby's heart had started to slow further. We spoke to 4 different consultants who all told us that our baby was dying. My antibodies had caused irreversible destruction to her heart, and the heart muscle was broken down. We decided to take on a lifetime of pain by interrupting the pregnancy to avoid her dying a slow and lonely death. I didn't want her to pass away without me being aware. I felt it was the only thing I could do for her, to be mentally there with her and be able to give her a peaceful death. At just under 25 weeks, I had a medical termination, which allowed for my daughter to pass away peacefully, whilst all she could hear was the sound of my heartbeat and feel the warmth of my love. So 2 days later, on the 7th of September 2016, after a 23-minute labour, my beautiful daughter Holly was born still. My heart exploded with love and broke with grief, as my world forever changed. We had 24 hours in hospital with Holly before saying our goodbyes. During that time, we made memories, we cried, and we told Holly how much we loved her. And then began the rest of my life, my forever after Holly. So I threw myself into planning her funeral. I started blogging. I began raising money. I started sharing pictures of Holly, talking about death, speaking at conferences, and trying to break the silence surrounding stillbirth. I share openly and honestly because things will never change if we skirt over the subject of death because it makes us feel uncomfortable. I promise you that however uncomfortable the subject of death makes you feel, it's 10 times worse for the parent who has to live with it stamped into our lives. Things will never change if we keep sugarcoating death as a baby born sleeping in a bid to make it sound less traumatic. And things will never change if we don't speak up and stand up for birth to be given as important a priority as any other live birth. So that's why I'm here, because Holly's life and death hasn't ended. She has shown me how important it is to get bereavement care right. We, as bereaved parents, only have one chance of making memories of our babies, but we as midwives have that chance to help assist those parents and give them the best experience possible. So what have I learned about bereavement care? I really wish it was possible to tell you in a single presentation what care we should be given, but the reality of that is impossible, as every parent, every baby, every labour, every grief is unique. So instead, what I think we should do is be aware of all the opportunities that are out there so we can give the parents as many options as possible when supporting their grief. It's the small things that can make such a difference when you're going through something so traumatic. It's being met as soon as you walk through the labour ward door by your bereavement midwife and whisked into your room so that you don't have to bypass any ladies in labour. It's having a midwife support you through labour because he or she understands that it is still a labour. I was offered a birthing ball and classical music, and I'm so grateful for that. I didn't have to focus on my own silence and pain. In amongst the mess of our baby dying, I was still able to have a beautiful death and be able to keep some positive memories from it. Holly was delivered just like any other baby. My husband cut her cord, and Holly was immediately brought up to my chest. Tabitha, our wonderful midwife, then went to call the hospital medical photographer to come and take some photos. We were lucky enough to deliver at a hospital, which offered the services of their own hospital photographer. And Tabitha understood the importance of recognising how quickly a baby changes once born. Now I have the most beautiful pictures of Holly and exactly how I remember her before she'd started to deteriorate. I also hadn't realised how quickly Holly would become so fragile, and in hindsight, I really wish I'd cuddled her for much longer than I had. After our first few initial cuddles, and aside from when both the medical photographer and the charity photographer came, we didn't hold Holly again, as it was clear how fragile she was becoming. I think any parent would tell you how they wish they could have just one more cuddle with their baby. So encourage the physical contact early on, whilst the parents are still able. Holly was cared for just as any live baby would have been. We had scales brought into the room, and so we were able to weigh Holly ourselves. I'm sure most of you have seen the precious memory boxes that are given out to parents when they've lost their baby. They are boxes filled with all sorts of things to help you make the most of your time with your baby and to be able to go home with some precious memories. When I have been at work, I too have given out these boxes and almost worked through every single item to help assist the parents in caring for their child. But what I hadn't ever done was think about what else I could offer. When dealing with something so hard, it's often difficult to take a step back and think about what else we can offer. Whilst we did do all the things inside the box with Holly, our midwives also went out of their way to do so much more. Our midwife cut up a nappy to make it small enough to fit Holly. It was a gesture that was so incredibly thoughtful and exactly what I wanted, as who would want to get their baby dressed without a nappy? The memory box also included a little box in which to put some more cutting of your baby's hair. Holly had very tiny black hairs covering her head, but instead of our midwife assuming that the cut of hair was only for older babies, she took ages with us, gently fluffing up Holly's hair so that we could cut a few locks and keep, and now we'll always have that piece of DNA with us forever. It's having the midwife know the paperwork inside out so that he or she is not flustering in front of you, unsure as to whether your baby is entitled to a funeral or hospital cremation. The last thing you want to be doing is sitting there grieving for your child and trying to work out what your baby is entitled to. It's having a midwife assure you that your baby will be well looked after when you leave hospital. Leaving Holly will always be the hardest thing I've ever had to do. But my midwife told me where she would be at all times, and I was given numbers on whom to call. I was reassured from the bottom of her heart that she'd be well looked after, just as if she was living. If I hadn't known where Holly was, it would have made leaving her so much harder. It's being aware of the wonderful organisations of who can bring more ways to make memories for you. So my sister had arranged for the charity Remember My Baby to come and take photographs of Holly, all free of charge. And they are some of my most precious pieces of Holly. It's not letting your own assumptions cloud what options are given to the parents. For example, as a midwife, we'd routinely always given medication to prevent lactating. I delivered Holly at a different hospital to where I worked, but immediately I asked for the medication, as that's what I had known and that's what I thought you did. But in hindsight, I really wish I hadn't let my milk dry up and actually gone on to keep some and have it made into some jewellery or something similar. I would have loved to have kept something else physical from her pregnancy. So what you expect or currently know as a midwife isn't always what the parents want, so just be open to other ideas. Something that Chris touched on, and it sounds obvious, but don't forget the dads. I think sometimes when we already feel nervous, unsure, awkward, or unprepared for situations such as stillbirth, it can be really difficult to focus on what else is going on other than what is physically happening to the mother. Again, for example, we had Holly blessed, which was my husband's request, as I'm not religious. But the father barely acknowledged my husband. He spoke to me, which was great, but it felt as if my husband mattered less. And I'm sure it's something which is never intentionally done, but is just too important to be neglected. Our midwife understood that there are no rules when you've lost a baby. You quite simply do as much or as little as you want. But you need to know what opportunities are there for you to do. Our midwife was completely led by us, but absolutely knew what she was doing. On a day which in most aspects was the worst day of my life, she still managed to bring some love and light into the world. The most important part of all of this was that Holly never left our side. Our hospital provided a cold cot, which meant that everything was done with us watching and with our consent. So if able, let the parents be involved in every aspect of their baby's care, if that is what they wish. There is no reason why they should miss out on making these memories. Leave any assumptions that you have and ask the parents if they want to dress their baby, have skin to skin with their baby, cut their baby's cord, do the handprints and footprints themselves. It's being given all the opportunities which can mean so much for these parents. I wish in the kindest way that I had experienced more as a student midwife, to have the opportunity to watch and listen to what your gut instinct is telling you that the couple need. I truly believe that looking after bereaved parents requires an additional set of midwifery skills to looking after a live labour. And I hope that in sharing Holly's story, I have given you some ideas as to how you can help when you are the midwife in that situation. It's an incredibly special job to be able to share a parent's grief and hold their most precious memories in your hand, which is why I feel the need for the compulsory support and training once qualified. Just give the parents the time that they need, the trust in that you'll look after them, and the knowledge that they need to get through this time. There is no right or wrong way in how they choose to spend their time with their baby, because there is no right or wrong way in how to grieve. So I just want to share a few of my own bereavement experiences as a midwife before I had Holly. Shortly after I qualified as a midwife in 2012, I was given the task of looking after my first couple who were losing their baby at 19 weeks. I did feel unprepared. Looking after this couple about to lose their baby, I wasn't sure how to act. I wasn't sure what to say. I wish I knew then what I do now. When you lose a baby, your world falls apart. You don't have much positivity left inside you, but you are still so in love and excited to meet your child. Tabitha spoke about Holly like she still meant something and understood that how, in a time of despair, you could still be excited to meet your baby. I think back to the couple I looked after when I first qualified. If anything, I think I probably mentioned the baby as little as possible. I didn't know what to say and was probably worried to upset them more. The reality of this is that nothing is going to upset you more. And for most, all they want is to be able to parent their baby in the short time that they have. Your baby is constantly on your mind, so someone else mentioning them isn't going to hurt you more. If anything, it makes you feel relief and comfort in hearing your baby spoken with so much respect. Take the lead from them. If they want to talk, then talk. And if they don't, they don't. If they don't, then don't. Both are absolutely okay, and both are absolutely fine. But I couldn't see this at the time. When the baby I was looking after delivered, the parents didn't want to see her. So I took the little baby into the side room and I did the footprints and handprints, but I felt like a failure. I hadn't pushed the couple into seeing their baby, and I made sure that they knew the opportunity was there. But I felt like a failure, as I imagined if it was me going through it, then I would want to see my baby. So maybe I hadn't supported them enough or done my job properly to make them change their minds. My own assumptions had clouded that actually this was perfectly right for the couple. They came back the following day and met their child. They just needed time, and time simply can't be forced when you've gone through something so traumatic. I hadn't failed. I'd done the best I could with the knowledge I had, but I hadn't taken into consideration that everyone is different. There are no rules when you lose a baby, and you can't assume what is normal because losing a baby feels so very abnormal. So let the parents guide you with the care that they need, but do talk about their baby and let them know it's okay how they are feeling and listen to them. A few years later, I had a shift in labour ward which has stayed with me. I was looking after a low-risk labourer and a lady labourer and her 15-week stillborn baby. I was flitting between the two rooms, being happy and excited to being quiet and respectful. It haunts me to this day that I couldn't have been with both of them when they delivered. I was with the live birth when the other lady delivered her dead baby. She must have been terrified. I had tried to tell my shift leader that I wasn't able to look after the both of them, but we were short-staffed and I was left without a choice. I was forced to prioritise the needs of the low-risk labour over the needs of the stillbirth. But now I understand that what that means is that the parents who had a live birth went home with a good experience and many more positive memories to make, whilst the other parents probably started their grief and the rest of their lives in a more painful way than it should have been. Life matters, but so does death. In addition, there was no support given to me, a midwife whose emotions were being conflicted. I was then given another labour and stillbirth to look after that day, and come home time, I was absolutely depressed and beaten. In fact, I requested to move to the postnatal ward after that. So look after each other and offer support if you know your colleague is having a hard day. I don't have the answers for when the shifts are short-staffed and you find yourself in these situations, but I want to shout that it's not acceptable. It's frustrating because these shifts just shouldn't happen, and it's devastating that far too often the stillbirths are the lesser priority. I feel that there is a massive ignorance to the impact that a poor service of support during stillbirth can have. It's almost as if bereaved parents matter less because our babies are already dead. It needs to be turned on its head and acknowledge that we need the support because our baby is dead. And what you can do is make yourself as knowledgeable now and experience as much as you can. During midwifery training, it can be very difficult to get the opportunity to look after bereaved parents. When these losses do sadly come about, often students are sheltered from partaking in their care, or they are busy needing to fulfil other parts to their portfolio. While of course you can't ask for more bereaved couples to walk through the door, and neither would you want to, I do feel that there is still so much that can be done to help you feel more prepared in that situation. Since losing Holly, the need for more training and awareness for current capability really has become apparent. What strikes me is that when going for midwifery job interviews, there are no questions asked on how capable you are of looking after these couples. There is no discussion on what previous experience you've had, and that terrifies me. It simply shouldn't be assumed, nor should it be ignored. The experience of losing your baby is so precious that I believe exposure and training to be absolutely necessary. I think it's so important that if as a student you haven't been exposed to pregnancy loss, then this needs to be addressed and further training made compulsory once qualified. I feel this training has to involve multiple organisations as you're experiencing today, and for these sessions to be made just as important as other days in your mandatory training. I truly feel that looking after a grieving couple is more than the precious skills it takes to be a midwife. It's being a midwife who can counsel people through the first days of grief by knowing what to say. It's being a midwife who understands the needs of someone who has lost a part of themselves. It's being a midwife who has gained as much insight into baby loss to allow them to support those parents as much as needed. As a parent to a baby who isn't here, I really have seen this from both sides. I have felt completely out of my depth looking after these couples, but now I understand how important it is to get the time of these parents right. I think everyone worries about saying the wrong thing to grieving parents. We've grown up in a society where death just isn't spoken about. But what I want to say is don't worry and don't overthink what to say. Just talk to us and listen to us. What is key is having knowledge of opportunities that are available to the parents in their area to assist in their memory making. They might want to do them all, they might not want to do any. That's okay. By you immersing yourself in the topic of baby loss, you are already doing your best. So what next? I was very lucky to fall pregnant about 3 months after Holly died. We had a very difficult pregnancy as my baby had a 1 in 5 chance of developing heart block, as Holly did, and we didn't get the all clear until 28 weeks into my pregnancy. But Holly gave us a beautiful gift. And that's her brother, my rainbow Kobe, who was born in August last year. His arrival brought about a new chapter to my grief as I see how much Eleni loves her brother and would love to have her sister here too. So whilst juggling grief, a newborn and a toddler, I've left midwifery and I'm now focusing on my babies and supporting others with bereavement care when I can. It's bittersweet that Holly's death has brought me here, but wonderful that her life and death has had so much meaning, and her journey certainly hasn't ended yet. Thank you.
Well done.